So there's a few questions all rolled into one here, so we'll get through them and hopefully work through them. What are your guys' thoughts on the price increases for the new NVIDIA cards? Are you surprised that the 4090 wasn't higher? Have they placed the cards at higher prices, as well as not announcing a 4070 to encourage people to buy the old XS3000 series? Do you think they'll discount those cards when or if AMD undercuts them, or once they sell through 3000 series cards? And do you think AMD is going to keep prices more similar to last year, or do you think they're going to follow NVIDIA with the inflated prices? So basically a question encompassing all the sort of angles of the pricing situation for RTX 40 series. So I guess...
Well, the first one is, do we expect... where the prices are, were we expecting them higher or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we said last time that a lot of people were suggesting the pricing was going to be ludicrous, which maybe it is.
Yeah.
But it was, $2,000, $3,000, crazy kind of pricing because they've seen that they can charge that. And we were like, no, most gamers aren't willing to pay that. We don't think it's going to go out of control. We were expecting it to be more similar to existing MSRPs for most of the models.
Certainly once the supply-demand equation slipped in favor of buyers, as in there was excess supply, I think it was less likely that we were going to see like a $3,000 GPU. I still maybe could have seen them go with like $2,000 for a 4090, but then the 4090 isn't a fully unlocked AD102, is that what they're calling it? AD102 die. So there is still room for that $2,000 product in the future if they wanted to produce a 4090 Ti. I think the pricing of the 4080 is high. It's definitely...
That one surprised me.
Definitely...
The 4090, I was expecting to be a similar price, which it is. It's $100 more.
It's $200 more.
$200.
The 4080 12GB is $200 more than the
4090. Isn't that $1,600?
Yeah, $1,600. I was just saying the 4080.
No. I was giving a breakdown of the price.
Oh, right,
so what
right,
I'm saying is the 4090. I was expecting that to be similar to the 3090, which it is $100 more. So that's pretty much.
With you now. With you.
Yep. Sorry, that's pretty much what I was expecting. And then filtering down, I agree. The 16 gigabyte 4080. I was expecting that maybe to creep up to maybe $900.
But it's really a 3080 Ti, maybe.
Yeah.
So, I think the 3080 products, or the 4080 products, sorry, they seem expensive. I think that's sort of the upper range of where you would, if you were thinking NVIDIA was going to raise prices, then what they've done is probably the upper limit of what you would have expected.
For those models, for sure.
those sort of models. Yep. So it certainly seems like, and when we looked into the sort of the performance claims that NVIDIA made for those cards, it seemed like they were pricing it very similar price to performance ratio to the current Ampere products.
Which works into the next part of the question, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think, I probably was expecting some cards to be lower. The 4090, though, seems about expected. So I guess...
So we think they're doing... Well, the theory is they're doing that to move GeForce 30 series stock, and that certainly seems to be the play, which you wouldn't have thought they could necessarily do with RDNA 3 coming in, because AMD could, if they wanted to, put an end to that party. But I guess that's the advantage of going early, making that play now, selling to the early adopters, as you've said, at the higher inflated price, and then move as much old stock as you can in that period. Take advantage of that window that you've got, I suppose. And then adjust if you have to.
Yeah, and they're not just taking advantage of the window before AMD launches. They're taking advantage of their brand. In that even when AMD launches, it's likely that a significant portion of buyers will only buy RTX. And if AMD's cards did turn out to be very competitive, it's still going to be, as we've said many times in Q&As, like a multi-generational process.
I think you still want to manage that, though. You don't want a generation where a lot of reviewers... I just say, the price and performance of the Radeon GPUs is just so vastly superior that, most of you have got to overlook stuff like, depending on how DLSS 3 plays out, but, as good as those features are, you can't really justify for most gamers copping that kind of premium. And I don't think NVIDIA wants to work themselves into a situation where, the vast majority of reviewers are raving about the value of Radeon GPUs.
Yeah, so I think, that... To me, and again, it is speculation, right? We don't know why NVIDIA's priced the cards as they have, but it does seem like by pricing it similar-ish to where the series cards are in terms of price to performance, based on the current pricing, they're sort of trying to straddle that. Well, if people compare MSRP versus MSRP, it's going to look favorable for NVIDIA because if you're comparing 4090 versus 3090 at $1,500, the 4090 is supposedly significantly faster. That's going to look good. But then if you compare current MSRPs, the 3090 is below $1,000, it's going to be similar. Yep. And I think there's definitely going to be some reason to still buy 30 series cards, especially if pricing continues to fall. And we're still seeing about 6 to 8% month on month falls for the last couple of months. So yeah, it seems like they're sort of trying to manage that inventory situation. They don't want to have the 40 series tank the price of 30 series so that everyone's taking huge losses on it. So I guess the question then becomes, and this is another part of this question is, is that going to then mean that NVIDIA is going to discount products? And it seems like they're really just leaving the door open for all possibilities. They can certainly sell to early adopters and trying to flog off as many cards as they can while their pricing is super high. And then they have a choice with AMD's response to do whatever they need to do, whether that's keep pricing the same because AMD prices it very similarly, or maybe they need to lower prices, which maybe they, instead of doing that, they just release different models. So, you've got 4070 that's a substantially lower price or whatever the case may be. All options are available to them. Whereas something that you often can't do is raise prices after the fact. That's like the big no-no that we virtually never see.
Sure, yeah.
So they didn't, by launching first at a high price, all those options are available. But if they priced it too low, then, they're not going to go and suddenly make it $900 and, scalpers will make it $900 as well. They don't want to lose out on that again. So that said, NVIDIA isn't historically a company that does significant price cuts.
Yeah, they have though. Not common practice, but they have done it. Whereas there was a point in time where Intel just never did it. Whereas these days now Intel does do it. But we have seen them drop prices of certain GPUs to better compete with if AMD actually came to the table with something. So they will do it if they have to.
Yes. Yep. I don't think they'd want to do it soon. They wouldn't want to do it within a month of launch. That's embarrassing.
Well, also that has some blowback from your early adopters and stuff who did pay full price.
Yeah. And from retailers that buy the super expensive cards and have to try and sell them. So there's
it's sort of a 6 month down the track thing you want to do at the earliest.
Yeah, so again, I just think they're leaving all their options open. As to the final part of this question was what we think AMD is going to do with their prices. AMD, the past couple of generations across CPUs and GPUs, has tried to price very similarly to their competitors. So they analyze where the products are going to fit and basically slot into that pricing tier, which I think works on the CPU side because their CPUs are very competitive, people are interested in them, whereas I don't think it works for their GPU side. And this is something you talked a lot about in your reviews of those cards when they came out, was sort of like, the pricing's okay. And then obviously we got the price boom happened after that. But certainly if the MSRPs were maintained throughout that period, they wouldn't have been very competitive.
Yeah, they just wouldn't have been cheap enough.
They wouldn't have been cheap enough. No. So, I think it's unlikely we're going to see like a 4090 tier performance card from AMD at half the price. Like that's just... Maybe it'll be $1,200 or $1,000, but it's not going to be $700.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just a situation where that's just a really bad business decision. Yeah. But I think they do need to undercut them by a reasonable margin to make it a no-brainer. You recommend that product, you should buy that product.
Yeah, I think like 5700 XT versus 2070 was sort of, there was $100 margin there. Certainly that was a key reason why a lot of people were recommending that card. So I think that sort of margin is potentially something we would see where, the cards could be better value, but they're not like half price.
Yep.
No, what was that generation where they did come out with a high-end card that was like half the price? It was ages ago. I'm talking like a decade ago, like HD 7000 or one of those series.
Honestly,
6000, whatever it was. Way, way ago they did that. But I think these days...
Yeah. Well, they've seen that doesn't boost sales in the way you'd expect it to because of mindshare and all that sort of stuff, which is why it's a bad business decision. But anyway, we'll see what they do. There's
certainly a lot of decisions they have to make because, as we talked about in the previous generation, I think building market share is more important than getting the quick, easy, high-end sales and having big margins. But then investors and shareholders, usually disagree with that point of view.
Yeah.
So
balancing act, I suppose.
Balancing act for sure.